Keanu Reeves discovers a girl in a dumpster and uncovers a dangerous secret. What happens next will leave you speechless. Welcome my YouTube channel Storytime. If you like this story, please don't forget like, subscribe and share. The streets of Los Angeles were unusually quiet that evening, cloaked in a thick blanket of fog. Keanu Reeves, known for his modesty despite his fame, was driving home in his classic black Porsche after an exhausting day on set. The glow of streetlights flickered through the mist, casting eerie shadows that danced along the deserted alleyways. Keanu wasn't one to follow the usual Hollywood celebrity routines. Instead of dining at posh restaurants, he often drove around aimlessly, listening to music or pondering life. That night, however, his quiet drive was interrupted by something unexpected. He pulled over near an old alley, a shortcut he often took to avoid traffic. Just as he was about to accelerate, a faint noise caught his attention. It was a muffled sound, almost like a soft cry. Keanu turned off the engine and rolled down the window. "Hello?" he called out, his voice echoing through the empty street. The sound grew clearer. It was coming from a dumpster tucked away in the shadows. Keanu's heart raced. He wasn't sure what he would find, but something told him to investigate. Grabbing the flashlight he kept in his car, he stepped out into the chilly night air. His boots crunched against the gravel as he approached the dumpster. The crying grew louder, tugging at his heart. With a deep breath, he lifted the lid. Inside, amidst piles of discarded trash, was a young girl. She couldn't have been more than 12 years old. Her face was smudged with dirt, her clothes torn and tattered. Trembling, she looked up at him with wide, fearful eyes. "It's okay," Keanu said gently, lowering his voice to avoid scaring her. "I'm here to help." The girl didn't speak, but her tears slowed as she gazed at him. Keanu removed his jacket and draped it over her small frame, shielding her from the cold. "What's your name?" he asked, kneeling beside the dumpster to meet her eye level. "Lila," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Lila, what happened? How did you end up here?" Lila shook her head, too frightened to explain. Keanu didn't press further. He extended his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, she took it. Carefully, he helped her climb out of the dumpster. Her frail form swayed unsteadily, and Keanu steadied her, feeling how light and fragile she was. "Let's get you somewhere safe," he said firmly. Keanu opened the passenger door of his car and helped Lila inside. She flinched at first, unused to kindness, but relaxed when she saw his reassuring smile. He handed her a bottle of water from his glove compartment. As he started the engine, Keanu found himself overwhelmed with questions. Who was this girl? Why was she left in such a state? And most importantly, who had abandoned her? Keanu decided to take her to his home for the night. It wasn't an impulsive decision, it was a reflection of the compassionate man he was. He knew the media would make a spectacle of her if he took her to a public place. She needed rest, warmth, and safety, things he could provide without judgment. The drive was silent, save for the hum of the engine. Lila clutched his jacket tightly, her eyes darting nervously at the passing lights. "Don't worry, Lila," Keanu said softly. "You're safe now." When they reached his modest home tucked away in the Hollywood Hills, Keanu parked the car and led Lila inside. His house was warm and welcoming, far from the opulent mansions of his peers. He guided her to the living room, where a plush couch awaited. "Sit here," he said. "I'll get you something to eat." Lila nodded, her eyes scanning the room. It was cozy, filled with books, guitars, and simple decor. It felt like a haven, a stark contrast to the cold dumpster where she had been just hours ago. Keanu returned with a bowl of warm soup and a slice of bread. Lila hesitated but eventually took the food, eating hungrily yet carefully. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice still fragile. Keanu sat across from her, watching her with concern. He wanted to ask about her past but knew she needed time. That night, as Lila fell asleep on the couch, Keanu stayed awake, thinking. The world was full of people in pain, and he had always been drawn to helping those in need. But something about Lila felt different. There was a mystery surrounding her, and he was determined to uncover it, not for his curiosity, but for her safety. Little did he know, this encounter would change both their lives forever. The morning sun filtered through the curtains of Keanu's living room, casting a golden glow over the scene. Lila was still asleep on the couch, bundled in a soft blanket he had laid over her the night before. Keanu sat at the kitchen table, a steaming cup of coffee in his hands. He was replaying the events of the previous night in his mind. Who was Lila? Why was she in that dumpster? And most importantly, who had abandoned her? These questions weighed heavily on him. He was no detective, but he knew he couldn't just ignore what had happened. As he sipped his coffee, he heard soft footsteps. He turned to see Lila standing in the doorway, looking hesitant. Her face was still streaked with faint lines of dirt, but her eyes seemed a little less fearful. "Good morning," Keanu said with a kind smile. "Did you sleep okay?" Lila nodded, clutching the blanket around her shoulders. "Yes. Thank you." "Are you hungry?" he asked, gesturing to the table. She hesitated before nodding again. Keanu stood and prepared a simple breakfast of toast, eggs, and fruit. Lila sat at the table, her movements careful, as though she was afraid of breaking something. As they ate, Keanu decided to gently approach the subject. "Lila," he began, his tone soft, "can you tell me anything about what happened? How did you end up in that alley?" Her fork paused mid-air. She glanced at him, her expression conflicted. "I don't remember everything," she said quietly. I woke up there." Keanu frowned. "You don't remember how you got there?" Lila shook her head. "No. I just remember being scared. I tried to stay quiet because," her voice trailed off, and she looked away. "Because what?" Keanu prompted gently. "Because someone might come back for me," she whispered. The weight of her words hit Keanu like a punch to the gut. Someone had left her there. Someone who might not have had good intentions. "Lila, do you have any family? Anyone who might be looking for you?" She hesitated before shaking her head. "I don't think so." Keanu studied her carefully. There was pain in her eyes, a kind of haunted look that spoke of a past too heavy for someone her age. He decided not to push further for now. She needed time to trust him fully. "Okay," he said gently. "You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. Just know that you're safe here." Lila nodded, her small frame relaxing slightly. For the first time, she gave him a faint smile. #### A visit to the police. Later that day, Keanu decided it was time to involve the authorities. He explained to Lila that they needed to go to the police to ensure she wasn't reported as missing. Though reluctant, she agreed. The local police station was a quiet place, and Keanu's presence caused a stir among the officers. Recognizing the actor, they were polite but professional. "This is Lila," Keanu explained to the officer at the desk. "I found her last night, and she doesn't remember much about how she got where she was. Can you check if she's reported as missing?" The officer, a kind woman named Detective Harper, nodded. "Of course. Lila, do you know your last name or where you're from?" Lila hesitated before shaking her head. "No." Detective Harper gave her a reassuring smile. "That's okay. We'll do everything we can to help you." She took down the details and promised to cross-check missing persons reports. Meanwhile, Keanu asked if Lila could stay with him until they figured things out. Detective Harper agreed, recognizing the actor's genuine concern for the girl. ###### A clue emerges. Back at Keanu's house, Lila seemed more at ease. She sat on the couch, flipping through a book she had picked from his shelf. Keanu watched her from the kitchen, his mind racing with possibilities. As evening approached, there was a knock at the door. Keanu opened it to find Detective Harper standing there with a file in hand. "We found something," she said, her expression serious. Keanu invited her in, and they sat at the kitchen table while Lila stayed in the living room, unaware of the conversation. "There's no missing persons report matching her description," Harper began, "but there is a report of a suspicious vehicle seen near the alley where you found her. A witness mentioned seeing a black van parked there for hours the night before." Keanu's jaw tightened. "A black van?" "Yes," Harper confirmed. "It was unmarked, and the plates were stolen. We're looking into it, but it's not much to go on." Keanu felt a chill run down his spine. The pieces were beginning to form a troubling picture. "Do you think someone dumped her there intentionally?" he asked. "It's a possibility," Harper admitted. "But until we know more, it's just a theory." Keanu glanced at Lila, who was now engrossed in the book. Whatever had happened to her, it wasn't random. Someone had left her there, and he couldn't shake the feeling that she was still in danger. "Please keep me updated," he said. Harper nodded. "I will. And thank you, Mr. Reeves, for looking out for her. Not everyone would go to such lengths." After she left, Keanu sat in silence for a long time. Lila's presence in his life was a mystery, but one thing was clear: he couldn't let her go until he knew she was truly safe. Keanu's quiet home, usually a sanctuary from the chaos of Hollywood, now buzzed with a peculiar energy. Lila, though still guarded, had begun to show glimpses of her personality. She was curious, polite, and observant. But the shadows in her eyes lingered, reminding Keanu that her story was far from ordinary. That evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Keanu decided it was time to dig deeper. He brought out a notebook and a pen, sitting across from Lila at the dining table. "Lila," he said softly, "I know it's hard, but I need to ask you some questions. Maybe it'll help us figure out what's going on." She looked up from her plate, her expression wary but willing. "Okay. Can you remember anything at all from before I found you? Even small details could help." Lila frowned, her small hands gripping the edges of the table. I remember being in a room. It was dark, and there were voices. They were arguing." Keanu leaned forward. "Do you remember what they said?" She shook her head. "Not really. But they sounded angry. And then, I think someone grabbed me. Everything after that is blurry." Keanu's heart ached for her. She was just a child, thrust into circumstances no one should face. He made a mental note to share this with Detective Harper. "Do you remember seeing anything unusual? Like a logo, a name, or something distinctive?" Lila paused, her brows furrowing. "There was a smell. It was really strong, like chemicals. And I think I saw a big red door before they put something over my head." Keanu's mind raced. A red door and the smell of chemicals. It wasn't much, but it could be a lead. The next morning, Keanu's phone buzzed incessantly. The story of his discovery had somehow leaked to the press. Headlines splashed across social media: "Keanu Reeves rescues mysterious girl," and "Hollywood hero helps young girl found in dumpster." Keanu cursed under his breath. The last thing Lila needed was public attention. He immediately called Detective Harper, who reassured him they would handle any media inquiries. "Be careful, though," Harper warned. "If someone's looking for her, they might see this as a way to track her down." Keanu nodded, his resolve strengthening. He wouldn't let anyone harm Lila. ###a visit to the alley. Later that day, Keanu decided to return to the alley where he had found Lila. He brought her along, hoping the location might trigger a memory. The alley was as grim as he remembered, dark, damp, and littered with debris. Lila clutched his hand tightly as they walked toward the dumpster. "Does this look familiar?" Keanu asked gently. Lila nodded slowly. "This is where I woke up." She glanced around, her eyes scanning the surroundings. Suddenly, she pointed to a nearby wall. "That's the red door," she said, her voice trembling. Keanu followed her gaze. The wall bore faint traces of red paint, but the door she spoke of was no longer there. It had been boarded up, leaving behind splintered wood and rusty nails. "This used to be a door?" Keanu asked. Lila nodded. "Yes. I remember it." Keanu took a photo of the boarded-up area with his phone. He noticed faint tire marks on the ground nearby, possibly left by the black van Detective Harper had mentioned. "Let's go," he said, sensing Lila's unease. Back at home, Keanu sent the photo of the boarded-up door to Detective Harper, along with Lila's description of the chemical smell. Harper responded quickly, intrigued by the lead. "That area used to be an old storage facility," Harper explained during a call. "It was shut down years ago due to violations involving hazardous materials. If Lila remembers a chemical smell, it's possible someone was using the site illegally." Keanu's grip on the phone tightened. "Do you think this could be connected to human trafficking?" "It's a possibility," Harper admitted grimly. "I'll send a team to investigate." Keanu's jaw clenched. The thought of Lila being a victim of such a heinous crime made his blood boil. That night, Lila had a nightmare. Keanu was jolted awake by her cries. He rushed to the living room, where she was thrashing on the couch, her face contorted in terror. "Lila," he called gently, shaking her awake. Her eyes flew open, wide with fear. She clung to him, sobbing uncontrollably. "They're going to find me," she whimpered. "No one's going to hurt you," Keanu said firmly, holding her close. "You're safe here." As her sobs subsided, Lila whispered, "I saw their faces in my dream. They were wearing masks, but I could see their eyes. They were so cold." Keanu felt a chill run down his spine. Her memories, though fragmented, were slowly surfacing, and with them, the danger she faced grew more real. The following day, Keanu received a call from Harper. "We found something," she said. "The facility behind that red door was being used recently. There were traces of chemicals and signs of human activity. But whoever was there cleared out in a hurry." Keanu's stomach churned. "Do you think they know we're looking for them?" "It's possible," Harper said. "And if Lila saw their faces, she might be the only witness who can identify them." Keanu's heart sank. The stakes were higher than ever. Whoever had left Lila in that dumpster wasn't just running from the law, they might come back for her. Determined to protect her, Keanu knew he had to take matters into his own hands. But what could a man who lived his life on screen do against real-life villains? The next morning, Keanu woke with a sense of foreboding. Lila was still asleep, curled up on the couch, the blanket pulled tightly around her. The girl's fragility was evident, but her courage shone through in the smallest ways, how she faced her nightmares, how she tried to recall her fragmented memories, and how she clung to the hope of safety. As Keanu prepared breakfast, he couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Detective Harper's call from the previous day haunted him. If someone had been using the storage facility and cleared out in a hurry, it meant they were aware of being tracked. He needed to keep Lila safe at all costs. By mid-morning, Detective Harper called again. Her voice was steady, but the urgency in her tone was unmistakable. "Keanu, we've identified something significant," she said. "Our forensics team found partial fingerprints at the storage site. They belong to a man named Victor Harlan. He's been on our radar for a while, suspected ties to a human trafficking ring operating in the area." Keanu gripped the phone tightly. "So, Lila might have been a victim?" "It's highly likely," Harper confirmed. "Victor's group is known for abducting young girls, but we've never been able to pin anything on him. If Lila can remember more details or identify him, she could be the key to breaking this case wide open. Keanu's stomach churned. He didn't want to pressure Lila, but the stakes were growing higher. Later that afternoon, Keanu took Lila to a secluded park for some fresh air. He thought the peaceful surroundings might help her relax. Lila seemed to enjoy the quiet, her guarded demeanor softening as she watched the birds and played with a stray dog that wandered near. But Keanu's instincts told him to stay alert. He noticed a black SUV parked nearby, its windows tinted. Though it didn't seem unusual, the vehicle's driver appeared to be watching them. Keanu's pulse quickened. He casually guided Lila back to the car, keeping an eye on the SUV. As they drove away, the black vehicle followed. Keanu made several turns, testing whether the SUV was tailing them. When it mirrored his movements, his suspicion was confirmed. "Lila," he said calmly, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. "Stay low, okay? Don't let anyone see you." Lila obeyed without question, crouching in the back seat. Keanu's mind raced. He had played countless action heroes on screen, but this was real life. He needed to think fast. Spotting a busy shopping district, Keanu pulled into a parking lot. He helped Lila out of the car and guided her into a crowded cafe. They sat in a corner booth, blending into the bustling crowd. The black SUV parked nearby, but the occupants didn't follow. Instead, it lingered for a few minutes before driving off. Keanu exhaled in relief, but the encounter left him shaken. Whoever had been following them was likely connected to Victor Harlan. Lila's safety was now more precarious than ever. That evening, Keanu sat with Lila in the living room, his demeanor calm but firm. "Lila, I know this is hard, but I need you to tell me everything you can remember about the people who took you," he said. Lila hesitated, her small hands trembling as she clutched the blanket. "I don't want to remember," she whispered. "I know," Keanu said gently. "But the more we know, the better we can protect you. You're so brave, Lila. I'm here with you every step of the way." Lila took a deep breath. "They wore masks," she began, her voice shaky. "But one of them had a tattoo on his wrist. It was a black snake, coiled around a dagger." Keanu froze. That detail was too specific to ignore. He made a mental note to share it with Harper. Lila continued, her eyes filling with tears. "And the van, it smelled like gasoline and paint. I heard them talking about moving me to another place. I think that's why they left me in the dumpster. They were hiding me until they could come back." Keanu's chest tightened. The thought of what could have happened if he hadn't found her was unbearable. "You're safe now," he assured her. "No one's going to hurt you again." The next morning, Keanu shared Lila's description of the tattoo with Detective Harper. Her response was immediate. "That tattoo matches Victor Harlan's known associates," she said. "It's their gang symbol. Lila's memory might be the evidence we need to bring them down." Harper arranged for Lila to meet with a sketch artist to recreate the tattoo and the masked men's eyes she had seen. Keanu hesitated but agreed, knowing this could help other victims as well. That evening, Harper visited Keanu's home with a security team. "We believe Victor knows where Lila is," she said gravely. "We'll station undercover officers nearby, but you need to be prepared. They might make a move soon." Keanu nodded, his resolve firm. "I'll do whatever it takes to keep her safe." As Harper left, Keanu turned to Lila, who had been listening quietly. "You don't have to worry," he said. "We've got people watching over us." Lila managed a small smile, but fear lingered in her eyes. That night, Keanu stayed awake, watching over Lila as she slept. The house was quiet, but the tension in the air was palpable. The people who had hurt Lila were out there, and they wouldn't give up easily. But Keanu wasn't just a movie star, he was a man with a deep sense of compassion and an unyielding determination to do what was right. As the clock ticked toward midnight, Keanu made a silent vow. Whatever it took, he would protect Lila and bring those responsible to justice. Keanu sat in the dim glow of his living room, his mind racing. Outside, the undercover officers stationed by Detective Harper kept watch. Every creak of the house, every gust of wind, seemed amplified. Lila was asleep in the guest bedroom, unaware of the silent battle raging around her. Keanu knew the danger was real. The men who had taken Lila wouldn't stop until they reclaimed their prey. But they hadn't counted on her being found by someone who would fight back. At 2 a.m., the silence shattered. Keanu's phone buzzed, a call from Harper. "They're here," she said, her voice tight. "Black SUV just circled your block twice. Stay inside and don't engage. We've got a team moving in." Keanu peered through the curtains. The SUV parked down the street, its headlights off. Two men emerged, their dark clothing blending into the night. Harper's voice was calm but firm. "They're likely armed. Stay with Lila. We'll handle this." But as Keanu moved toward the guest room, the sound of a window breaking stopped him cold. His heart pounded as he grabbed the baseball bat he kept by the door. The men weren't waiting. Keanu moved swiftly, his years of action roles giving him an edge in the moment. He locked the bedroom door and whispered to Lila, who had woken up, her eyes wide with fear. "Stay here," he said. "Don't come out until I say it's safe." Lila nodded, her small frame trembling. Keanu stepped into the hallway as the intruders entered. He could hear their hushed voices and the sound of footsteps on the hardwood floor. With a deep breath, Keanu crept toward the noise. As one of the men turned the corner, Keanu struck with the bat, catching him off guard. The man crumpled to the floor with a groan. The second intruder lunged at Keanu, a knife glinting in his hand. Keanu dodged, his reflexes sharp, and slammed the bat into the man's arm, disarming him. But the struggle wasn't over. The man tackled Keanu, and the two grappled, knocking over furniture in the process. Outside, the undercover officers sprang into action. Harper, leading the charge, ordered her team to surround the house. Hearing the commotion inside, they burst through the door, guns drawn. The sight of armed officers froze the second intruder mid-struggle. The men complied, knowing they were outnumbered. Harper's team quickly subdued and cuffed them. Keanu leaned against the wall, catching his breath. Relief washed over him as Harper approached. "You okay?" she asked. Keanu nodded. "I'm fine. Just glad you got here in time." When Harper brought the men outside, Lila peeked out of the bedroom, her face pale but determined. "Are they the ones?" Harper asked gently. Lila hesitated, then stepped closer. Her eyes scanned the men, lingering on their faces. She pointed to the taller one. "He was there," she said quietly. "I saw him." The man glared at her but said nothing. Harper nodded, her expression firm. "That's all we needed, Lila. You did great." The arrest of the two men led to a cascade of breakthroughs. With their connections to Victor Harlan exposed, Harper's team raided several locations linked to the trafficking ring. The evidence was damning: stolen documents, fake IDs, and lists of potential victims. Victor Harlan was arrested within days, his empire dismantled piece by piece. Through it all, Keanu stayed by Lila's side, offering her unwavering support. With the case closed, Lila's future became the focus. Harper located a distant relative, a kind woman named Evelyn, who was overjoyed to take Lila in. "I want you to know," Evelyn told Keanu during their meeting, "you saved her life. She's a brave little girl, but she couldn't have done this without you." Keanu smiled, his gaze softening as he looked at Lila. "She saved herself. I just helped her along the way." Lila hugged him tightly before leaving with Evelyn. Though tears welled in her eyes, there was also hope, a spark of light that hadn't been there before. Days turned into weeks, and life slowly returned to normal. But Keanu often found himself thinking about Lila and the extraordinary journey they had shared. In a rare interview, when asked about the incident, Keanu said, "Sometimes, life gives you a role you didn't audition for. Lila came into my life unexpectedly, and she reminded me of what really matters: kindness, courage, and standing up for what's right. She's the real hero of this story." Though their paths had diverged, Keanu knew he would carry the memory of Lila forever. She had taught him that even in the darkest moments, there was always a chance to find light, and to be that light for someone else. If you want part 2, comment for part 2. Thank you for watching my YouTube channel. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget like, subscribe and share.